everyone, my name is Peyton and I'm new to YouTube. I am a huge book fan, especially of fantasy, if you can't tell by some of the books that are on my shelves. I moved to a new house not that long ago and I finally got the chance to get some new white bookshelves to go with my more minimalistic white themed room. Now obviously the bookshelves themselves are not minimalistic in any way. They are packed full of knickknacks and decor, and they're basically the centerpiece to my room. These are the Billy bookshelves from IKEA, and I love them so much. They're the perfect size to fit all the books and the decorations that I wanted. Most of the books on here are also extremely personal to me, and each shelf kind of encompasses a genre or theme of sorts, so I just wanted to show them to you all and talk about some of my favorite books. I am in college right now, so I'll only have this particular setup for a few more years, since I'll only be living in my family house for a few more years. So I also wanted to capture this beautiful setup while it lasts, or before my shelves get overcrowded, because undoubtedly I'm going to keep buying more books. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first up, I have to stretch a little bit, but on the very top I have this cute little sign that says "Beautiful," which a family member got for me. And then over here I have this adorable little art piece, which is actually from Louisiana, and it's of the French Quarter in New Orleans. I haven't gotten the chance to go to New Orleans yet, but hopefully once everything goes back to normal, I'll be able to do so for my 21st birthday. I've got this cute little hanging plant here. It goes all the way down there. This is also from IKEA. All of the plants on my shelves are from IKEA. I just really wanted some touches of greenery to liven up my white shelves, and I think this does the job pretty well. Okay, so on this first shelf are some of my favorite fantasy series of all time. First, we have the Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. So I'm sure you all know what they are if you're a fan, but we have Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess. And I know they're coming out with an Infernal Devices TV show soon, so I'm super excited and really hoping they don't butcher it like they did for the Mortal Instruments movie and the Shadowhunters TV show. Especially not Jem, because he's my favorite character and they need to do him justice. And then over here I have these equally adorable bookmarks of Jem, Tessa, and Will, and they are from the Etsy shop Epic page, which I'll link in the description because they are so adorable and you might want to get them for yourself. And then of course I have the Mortal Instruments series here. I know these two are different and that might bother some people, but for me, I'm a very nostalgic collector. And when I started reading the series, I read the first two with the older cover versions, so I am sticking with that. And then here I have some books by a fantasy author that I feel like a lot of fantasy fans have not heard of, and that is A.C. Gaughen. I have her books Scarlet, Lady Thief, and Lionheart, which is part of a series that is actually a Robin Hood retelling. It's really good. The language that's used is very unique. You definitely need to read it. And then I have her newer series, which is Reign the Earth and Imprison the Sky. And then I've got these adorable succulents over here. And underneath I have the Graceling trilogy by Kristin Cashore, and if you haven't read it, you need to. It is set in a world where people have special powers, and those people are called the Gracelings, and it's got tons of royal intrigue, heart-melting romance, strong female protagonists, basically everything you need in a YA fantasy. Although my favorite character is probably Katsa from the first book, because she is such a wild card and I love it. Okay, so on to my next shelf. I have taken to calling this my Gothic or dark romance shelf because I'm not totally sure what it is. Some of the books on here are more contemporary or young adult, while some are more classic stories, but they all kind of have that dark or Gothic romance theme. So over here I have my little Phantom of the Opera collection. Shout out to any Broadway fans because I'm obsessed with the Phantom of the Opera. first up I have this gorgeous edition of The Phantom of the Opera and Other Gothic Tales from Barnes & Noble. I love this edition. I think it's beautiful. The pages are actually gold as well. I really like that it includes other Gothic tales too, so I feel like you're definitely getting your money's worth. This one was a bit more expensive than I usually spend on books, but it was just so aesthetic, and I was really interested in the other Gothic tales as well, so if you are really into dark romance, then I definitely think this is worth it. And then right next to that one here, I have this edition of the Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, and this one actually came from a local thrift store. I know the cover's a bit weird. It's actually from 1988, so it's a little bit older, and it's got this 80s typeface, which I think is really cool. And then it's got these cute little like caricatures and cartoons and even advertisements from the Phantom of the Opera from the 80s, which I love a lot. So next I have two versions of the Phantom of the Opera on DVD. First I have the 25th anniversary edition at the Royal Albert Hall in London because Sierra Burgess and Raymond Carrimloo are my favorite Broadway actors for The Phantom and Christine. And then I have the Ordinary Phantom DVD with Gerard Butler and Emmy Rossum. Then I have these two beautifully painted drums, which are actually from Animal Kingdom in Disney World, and they act as book stands to kind of prop the books up. Then I have some more Gothic lit, most of which I read in high school or college. I have Dracula, of course, then I have some Mary Shelley books. I have The Last Man, and I have Frankenstein. I have The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I have The Scarlet Letter. I would love to get more aesthetic versions of these books, but for now I'd rather spend my money on new releases since I am more into YA and contemporary than classics, so that's just gonna have to wait. This pretty edition of The Complete Tales of Mystery and Imagination is an Edgar Allan Poe collection that I actually got from that same thrift store where I got the 1988 version of The Phantom of the Opera. This collection is awesome. If it wasn't so heavy, I would take it with me everywhere. I especially like to read it around Halloween time because it just feels so nostalgic cracking it open and reading like a story or two a night. It feels like what I used to do when I was a kid, and I would read 1 or 2 fairy tales each night. And then the last series on this shelf is this trilogy by Kelly Cray, which is Nevermore, Enshadowed, and Oblivion, which I love for so many reasons. But the premise is that it's set in high school and it's about a goth guy and a popular cheerleader girl falling in love, but it incorporates a ton of Poe imagery and references, which is why it's up here by Poe. It starts out as like a very basic YA series, and you think you know where it's going, you think it's going to be one thing, but then it slowly devolves into madness, which is exactly what Poe's stories do, if you've read him. I remember I read this first book, Nevermore, in high school, and I was so in love with it that when I found out it was a trilogy, I literally inhaled the other 2 books in like 2 days. So I absolutely recommend these if you haven't read them or heard of them, and if you're a Poe fan. And then on top of them here, I have this cute little jellyfish encased in resin, and he actually lights up, which is kind of hard to see, but it looks cool at night. Okay, so next up, this shelf doesn't really have a specific genre again. It starts out kind of in the postmodern fiction realm, and then it goes into nonfiction, so I'm not totally sure, but it's something like that. So first up, I have some of my Haruki Murakami books and some other Japanese literature. I am personally very into Japanese culture. I'm actually taking it as a major in college right now. Murakami, I'd say, isn't one of my favorite authors, and I haven't read as much Japanese lit as I would like, and I'm definitely not fluent enough to be able to read Japanese lit in Japanese, although I do have another shelf further down with some Japanese books that are actually in Japanese, but Murakami is up here because I need to read him in the English translation. He's not one of my favorite authors, but he is my boyfriend's favorite author, so I've been trying to read more of his work recently. So I own 3 of his books, and that is Kafka on the Shore, Norwegian Wood, and After Dark. And then I have If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. My most recent Murakami read was After Dark, and I actually enjoyed that one a lot. It has, it's got like really urban vibes. And if you're into like contemporary lit or books about the everyday that have kind of a whimsical twist, then I would definitely urge you to check out Murakami. Then up on top here I have this cute little mug, which is a stack of books, and it's actually Beauty and the Beast themed. I thought it said Belle on it somewhere. On this side it says Belle, and this is actually from Disney as well. And then down here we get into one of my favorite authors, which I have decided just now that I'm going to make a whole separate video on him because I have no idea how to capture the general insanity and the fantasticalness of Italo Calvino in a short bookshelf tour. So I will probably be doing another video on him, and my Calvino collection is definitely still growing, but so far I have 6 memos for the next millennium: Marco Valdo, Invisible Cities, The Baron in the Trees, The Complete Cosmic Comics, The Non-Existent Night, and The Cloven Viscount, and If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. And I can say without a doubt that If on a Winter's Night a Traveler is my favorite standalone book of all time. And I also just want to show you, because I really love the minimalistic covers. So each one has like one little drawing on the front, and I think that's really cool. It definitely doesn't really mimic his style of writing, which is not minimalistic at all, but it's still very cool. So moving on, before I talk about Calvino too much, I have these editions of Flowers for Algernon and the Pigman, and I really love the red covers. They're textured and they're very cool. These are some old editions. This one is from 85, I think, and then this one is from 78, if I'm remembering correctly. It's also kind of hard to figure out the publishing info on older books, but these are really cool and I like how they match. Then I have a few more postmodern type books, depending on what you want to call it. I have The Stranger by Albert Camus, I have Steppenwolf by Herman Hesse, Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. This one is my favorite book that I had to read for assigned reading in high school, so that gets the grand title of that. And then I have Quiet by Susan Cain, which you absolutely have to read if you're an introvert. It's so interesting. And then I'm starting to get into more of my nonfiction here. I have The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. I have a very short Oxford introduction on autism. And if you are interested in any subject whatsoever, these short introductions by Oxford are really good. They're very comprehensive, they're easy to understand, and I definitely recommend. And then I have a couple writing guides. I have this book called Who Says, and then I have From Chaos to Creativity. I have The Secret History of the World by Mark Booth. I have a copy of the Holy Bible. I have a Rick Steves travel guide for Europe. I have First Steps to Wealth by Danny Johnson. And now you're starting to see these are some of the more random books that I've picked up from various places in my life. A lot of them I haven't read yet. But again, I'm more a fan of fiction than nonfiction, so that would make sense for me. Then I have In the Gardens of Japan by Kenny Freese, which is a poetry book. I have If You're Looking for a Victim, Keep Looking by Dan Skochilis. And then I have Prince: The Last Interview which is an absolutely awesome look into his life if you are a fan of him or his music. Prince was a very private person, so he didn't do interviews often, but this is basically a collection of all the interviews he ever did, so very cool. Then I have The Wagon and Other Stories from the City. I have In Search of Respect, which is an anthropology book about New York. And then I have these two books about some of my favorite rock musicians, which I've decided not to read until I'm older because I think it would really sit with me better when I am closer to the age of those musicians. And that is Jimmy Buffett, A Pirate Looks at 50, and then Eric Clapton's autobiography. Okay, and then heading over to this shelf, this is my classic / Shakespeare shelf. I absolutely adore Shakespeare, and I'll just say right away that my favorite play is A Midsummer Night's Dream, just so there's no question about that. And then a lot of the books on this shelf I read for school because, like I said, and contrary to what you might have seen on my shelf so far, because I just have a lot of hodgepodge books on some of the shelves, I am more a fan of contemporary fantasy than classics. So a lot of these are old beat-up editions that I got from high school or college, but I do have this very pretty edition of the complete works of William Shakespeare, which has gold pages. I really love gold pages. I really love gold in general. And then I have not read all of Shakespeare's works. Hopefully I'll get there someday. And then I have individual books of Hamlet, Macbeth, Twelfth Night. I have 2 copies of A Midsummer Night's Dream. This one I got to study in school since I'm an English major. And then this more beat up edition is my original. And then I have The Taming of the Shrew, which I also love. And I have Romeo and Juliet. I have The Diary of Anne Frank. I have The Odyssey. I have To Kill a Mockingbird. And then I have some Dickens books, which I'm sorry in advance for saying this for you Dickens fans, but I hate Dickens. And the only reason I have these is for school. I have A Tale of Two Cities. I have Hard Times. Then I have The Importance of Being Earnest. I have Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and I have Little Women. And then I have this gorgeous edition of A Christmas Carol. I know I literally just said that I hate Dickens, but I don't know anybody alive who hates A Christmas Carol, and I'm no exception. Plus the cover art is just beautiful on this one. And then over here on top, I have these little mugs, and these are from Chris Kindle Mart. They're just adorable and I can't bear to drink out of them, so I put them on display here. And then here I have some Jane Austen books. I also read these for school, but I recently got into her and I love her writing. I love her books. My favorite is Pride and Prejudice, of course, and I have 2 copies of that. And then I have Emma, I have Northanger Abbey and Other Works. And then I have Atonement by Ian McEwan, which is kind of like a retelling or like a parody of Northanger Abbey. Okay, and then this next shelf is one of my favorite shelves ever. I'm really proud of how it looks, and I am so excited to talk about it. This is my Skulduggery Pleasant shelf, because Skulduggery Pleasant by Derek Landy is my favorite fantasy book series of all time. It's been my favorite since I was 12 years old, and it remains so today. I have so much to say about the series, and I also just want to reread the whole series before I make a specific video dedicated to it, but let's just say I literally have a Skulduggery Pleasant tattoo. That is how much I love it. I'm not sure if I need to say any more beyond that, but like I said, I'll probably make a video dedicated to talking about the series and what it's about and probably showing off my tattoo. But I guess I can give a quick synopsis for those of you who don't know Skulduggery, because it is a children's series and it's not as popular in America. So basically it's an urban fantasy series. It's set in Ireland, and it's about a walking, talking skeleton detective named Skulduggery Pleasant and his partner Valkyrie Kane. Each character in these books is so memorable. The magic systems are incredible. Derek Landy's writing style is so bold, so witty. His fight scenes are my absolute favorite. I feel like I'm gushing, and I know I am, but I don't even know where to begin describing everything about these books. Derek Landy ranks in my top 3 favorite authors. But for right now, I'll just show off each book because I'm kind of an obsessive collector. I don't even have all the editions of the books yet, but okay, so let's just start with the first one, which is, this is Scepter of the Ancients. I guess I could, okay, I'm not gonna pull it out and show you the cover, but that's the, my original edition. That's the edition that I originally read the first story with, and that is the American edition of the cover. And then this little edition on top is also the first book, but in Ireland it's just called Skulduggery Pleasant. And I bought this one at a bookstore in Ireland, which was one of the most exciting moments of my life, let me tell you. And this cover art for the new paperbacks is beautiful. And all or most of the characters from the first book are on here, so I can kind of introduce you to them. This is Skulduggery Pleasant. This is Valkyrie Kane. This is Nefarian Serpine. This is China Sorrows. This is Ghastly Bespoke. This is Skulduggery's car, the Bentley. I really hope some of you have read Skulduggery, because otherwise this is not going to make a whole lot of sense, but if you haven't and you're a fantasy fan, just know that I wouldn't lie to you, and that the series is gold and you need to read it. Okay, and then the little trinkets on top here, this is a snow globe that I got from Ireland. I collect snow globes as well, so you might see quite a few of these on my shelves. And then this is just a little Halloween decoration of a skeleton. And then on this stack, I have the American edition of Playing with Fire. I have the original American edition of Skulduggery Pleasant. I have the original American edition of Playing with Fire, and then I have the hardcover American edition of Skulduggery Pleasant. Yes, I have too many editions, and someone needs to stop me, or I will just keep buying them. This series has introduced me to everything I love about fantasy and morally questionable characters, so if that is your speed, then please read them. Okay, and then over here I have the American edition of The Faceless Ones, which is the 3rd book now. And then I have Skulduggery Pleasant Dark Days, Skulduggery Pleasant Mortal Coil, Deathbringer, Kingdom of the Wicked, and then I have the hardcover editions of The Last Stand of Dead Men, The Dying of the Light, Resurrection, Midnight, Bedlam, and Seasons of War, which is the newest book. And then Midnight is actually a signed edition as well, because I got this one while I was in Ireland also. So I can show you that really quick. That's Derek Landy's signature. It's kind of like a line, but I promise it's his signature, for real. And then the last 2 books here are the short story collection, Armageddon Outta Here, and then the spin-off, The Maleficent 7. And then moving on from Skulduggery to this shelf, this is kind of my thriller slash horror shelf. I don't have a ton of books specifically for either genre, so that's why they're kind of combined on this shelf. And I think aesthetically this is one of my favorites as well. I think the potted plant really pulls everything together. But underneath that plant, I have Derek Landy's other series, and I promise this is the last you'll hear of Derek Landy for this tour. This is his Demon Road trilogy, which is Demon Road, Desolation, and American Monsters. And most of the editions that you'll see of Demon Road are gold, like this background part is gold, but I have the silver edition from Waterstones, and I can show you the cover better. And this one is also signed. And then right in front here, you might have noticed, I'm a big fan of the TV show Supernatural. It got me through some tough times, and it's impacted me in a lot of ways. So I have this little model of the 67 Impala, and then I have this baby Funko Pop of Dean Winchester with a little knife. He's super cute. And the rest of the shelf, I have Ransom Riggs, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and Hollow City. I have Stephen King's The Shining, and then I have Forever Odd, which is the second book in Dean Koontz's Odd Thomas series. Odd Thomas is one of my favorite book series ever as well. I feel like I've said that about so many books on these shelves, but I have a lot of favorites. I still have to collect the other 7 or so books, but if you haven't heard of Odd Thomas, it's more of like a supernatural horror type series. It's about a small town fry cook with psychic abilities, and I haven't read anything else by Dean Koontz, but I love Odd Thomas. It's amazing. And then I have a few random YA books. I have Across the Universe and Morpheus Rode the Light. I have a short horror story collection called Hell's Heart. I have Martha Wells' All Systems Red, which is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries, and that is a sci-fi series about AI. Then I have Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. I have The Bourne Identity by Robert Ludlum. I have another Odd Thomas book called Odd Interlude, and then I have another Dean Koontz book called Breathless, which I haven't read yet. My display book here is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. The TV show on Netflix is my favorite TV show of all time. The book is slightly different if you've seen the TV show and you're interested in reading the book, but it is just as equally disturbing, psychologically and supernaturally, so if that's your thing, this is definitely a good read. And I really like the penguin cover for this one. It's very vintage looking. And then I have Gillian Flynn books here underneath Hill House. I have Gone Girl, which messed me up for days when I read it. And then I have Sharp Objects and Dark Places, which I'm very excited to read. And then this little turtle is from Hobby Lobby, and then he just has some trinkets inside, some pins, some little, I'm not even sure what's in there, but little odds and ends. Moving on to my next shelf, I have some of my standalone fantasy books, or the first books of fantasy series that I never finished. We'll start on top here with this cute little smiling dragon statuette. He is actually from medieval times. And he is sitting on top of a stack of books, including The Bird King by G. Willow Wilson, Wicked by Gregory Maguire, Circe by Madeline Miller, Children of Blood and Bone and Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi, and then Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by, yep, you guessed it, J.K. Rowling. And then right next to those, I have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I have The Last Wish, which is the first book in the amazing Witcher series, if any of you have seen it on Netflix, and the books are by Andrzej Sapkowski. Next to that, I have Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. I absolutely love Anne Rice's writing style and descriptions, and I can't wait to read more of her books. I'm not sure why I haven't yet. And then next to her, I have The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. The Rules of Magic was a pretty good book. It was set in New York City, which I liked a lot, but I'll admit that I picked it out solely for the cover. I thought that the flowers and the gold glitter were just mesmerizing. And it kind of fits with the theme that I have going on here too. It's almost rainbow, but not quite. I've got red, yellow, green, blue, dark blue, but I don't have an orange book. I suppose I could put Circe there for my orange book, but I kind of like how it looks right now. And then next I have The Magicians by Lev Grossman. I have Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. Moonchosen by PC Cast, which I have not read yet. A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, and Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. And then this stack of books over here includes some of my favorite fairy tale retellings, as well as one of my new favorite fantasy series. But first I will show off these cute little metal fairy statues. As you can see, they're all standing in different poses, and each one is holding a colored gemstone clasped in her hands. These little statues are from the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, and I love them so much. And then my display book on top here is Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge, which is a fairly cruel Beauty and the Beast retelling in which the Beast character is even crueler and more beautiful than usual. I also love the cover art for this book. I love the way that the rose and the staircase spiral down together. And then under that I have Tiger Lily by Jodi Lynn Anderson, which is a Peter Pan retelling from the perspective of Tiger Lily. Then I have Unhooked by Lisa Maxwell, another Peter Pan retelling in which the roles of Peter Pan and Captain Hook are very different from what you've come to know from Disney. Under that I have my new favorite fantasy series, which is V.E. Schwab's Villain series, and that consists of Vicious and Vengeful. I just recently finished Vicious and I'm in the middle of Vengeful right now. I absolutely love them. If you're looking for a fantasy book series that bridges the gap between YA fantasy and adult fantasy, then the Villain series does that very maturely and successfully. I was honestly so impressed. V.E. Schwab turns every trope about villains and heroes on its head, and like I said with Skulduggery, I love books like that raise moral questions, so of course I love these books, and I'm also in love with the character Victor and all of his moral grayness. Onto my Leigh Bardugo shelf. Yes, I have a whole shelf dedicated to Leigh Bardugo because she's an incredible fantasy author whose world building, magic systems, and diversity are all wonderful. Shadow and Bone will probably always be my favorite book because it's the first book of hers that I read, and I'm kind of in love with the Darkling, though of course I love Nikolai as well. I don't know how you could not. I started reading the Grisha trilogy way back in 2013 or so I do have the early editions of the trilogy. I have Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising, of course. I like these covers better, honestly, because they're much darker and more fitting for Leigh Bardugo's goth magic aesthetic, in my opinion. I was actually able to go on the Fierce Reads tour when Ruin and Rising first came out, so this edition of Ruin and Rising is actually signed. Let me show you really quick. And she wrote, "There is no end to our story." So yes, that does mean that I got to meet the one and only Leigh Bardugo, and I'm so glad I did. She is sweet, funny, and all-around amazing writer and human being. I really appreciate that she takes criticism and uses it to make herself a better writer. That's something that I really admire and want to do with my own writing, but a lot has changed in her writing style since Shadow and Bone to the Six of Crows duology and beyond, so you can definitely tell that she's been working hard on improving her writing, and she clearly does thorough research into the countries and the characters she creates. I've been inspired by her since I was very young. Honestly, I can't say enough good things about her, so I'll probably make one, if not a few more videos talking about Bardugo's books because I love them so much. And then right next to those more Gothic original editions, we have the newer editions of the Grisha trilogy, and each one of these features one of the 3 amplifiers on the cover. We have Morozova's Stag, the Sea Serpent, and the Firebird. I know I love the other covers better, but I like these covers as well. I think the background looks kind of like an acrylic pour. And then this cute little wooden sign in the middle here, I actually made this. I saw the idea for a miniature signpost on Pinterest, and I thought doing one for the Grishaverse would be perfect because there are so many distinctive countries. So as you can see, I have Jurda, Kerch, Ravka, Novaya Zem, and Shuhan. And I made this by using a wooden dowel and then using scrap pieces of wood and hot gluing them to that dowel. Then I drilled a hole in this little wooden block here and glued the dowel in to stabilize it. And then of course I painted the whole thing brown and painted the countries on each of the wood pieces. A few magnetic bookmarks perched precariously on top of my books, and these were made by Dreamy & Co. on Etsy. I'll link her in the description. This is the Darkling, this is Alina Starkov, and this is Nikolai. I think they're so cute. I got these a while back, so I'm not sure that this artist's rendition of Alina is accurate to the current canon, but I still think they're super cute. And by the way, I can try to give a quick synopsis of the Grishaverse for those who are new to Bardugo, but I guarantee I won't do her justice. But even if you're not new to her, I just love hearing the stories of her books over and over again. So basically in this universe, the Grisha are a magical elite led by the Darkling, this cute little dude, and they fall under different orders of magic related to the living and the dead, summoning of different elements, or fabrication of materials. The first few books follow Alina Starkov, who discovers that she is a Grisha, and her attempts to save her country of Ravka from being destroyed by the Fold, which is a patch of land essentially consumed by shadows and monsters. Honestly, that's about all I can explain without too many spoilers, because then we go into the Six of Crows duology, which I have right here, of course. That is Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. And those are post-Grisha trilogy, though it's not necessary to read them in that order. I love these books so much too. Shadow and Bone will always hold a special place in my heart, but these are so good. The covers are gorgeous, the maps on the inside are even more gorgeous, and I love Kaz and Anij and Nina and Jesper and literally every character in those books. And then right next to that we have the Language of Thorns, and I just have to show off the pages for this one real quick because it's super cool too. This is Bardugo's collection of fairy tales, and as you read them, the art on the pages shifts and moves, and it kind of tells the story along with her words, which I think is a very unique idea, something I've never seen before, and it's really cool. Then next to that, we have this pretty golden book, which is King of Scars. Honestly, her covers are just the best. Like, no cover beats a Leigh Bardugo cover, I'm sorry. But King of Scars follows the character Nikolai, this little man, from the Grisha trilogy. And then, of course, the last book on this shelf is Ninth House, which is Bardugo's first dive into the realm of adult fantasy. It is outside the Grishaverse. Ninth House is much edgier than her YA and follows Alex Stern, who is a freshman at Yale, and the supernatural happenings in the secret societies at Yale. I feel like that was a lot of excited jabbering, but I can't say it enough. If you're a fantasy fan and you have not read Leigh Bardugo, then you need to do so immediately. The next shelf that I'm going to show you is the Japanese shelf that I mentioned earlier. This shelf has just as many trinkets, if not more, than it has books, and that is simply because I am not fluent in Japanese yet, so I don't have a lot of books in Japanese, but I do have some easier poetry books and children's books which help me practice the more basic grammar and vocabulary that I know. I also have a modest manga collection over here. It is nothing compared to some of the extensive collections I've seen on BookTube, but I do have this old Pokemon Red manga. I have volumes 14 through 19 of Vampire Knight by Matsuri Hino, and then I have volumes 16, 17, and 23 of Pandora Hearts by Jun Mochizuki. These are just two of the many manga and anime that I like. Some of the other ones that I like are so many. Full Metal Alchemist, Soul Eater, Fruits Basket, Sword Art Online, Death Note, Demon Slayer, of course, Mob Psycho, and others that I certainly can't remember right now, but this is, like I said, all the manga that I have at this moment. I also have volume 1 of The Ancient Magus Bride, or Mahao Tsukai no Yome, and that actually came from Japan. And then I have this cute little guidebook for The Ancient Magus Bride as well. In front of all my manga, I have these adorable glass origami birds, which my boyfriend brought back for me from Japan, and I think they're very delicate and beautiful, and they are color coordinated with the red and white of the manga, so it all fits together perfectly. So over here I have a few more trinkets related to Japan. The first is a snow globe of Mount Fuji that I actually got at the top of Mount Fuji when I visited Japan. Like I said, I collect snow globes, and I love getting snow globes from the places that are most important to me, and obviously Japan is one of those places. And The snow globe is so pretty. It has little cherry blossom trees at the base of the mountain. It's beautiful. And then these little guys over here, these are actually from Epcot, Japan at Disney World. And they are a little dragon and rat statuettes from the Chinese zodiac. And my Chinese zodiac is the dragon, so that's why I got him. And then I also just got the rat because I thought he was really cute as well. And then all of the books under here came from a Japanese bookstore called Kinokuniya. And I'm actually very lucky to have access to multiple Kinokuniya stores because there's not many in the US. But the first book is Neko Atsume, like collector's book. And I know the fad of Neko Atsume has kind of worn out at this point, but it's a book with easy grammar and easy vocab. So it's good for practice. Plus there's pictures of cute cats, and that's always a plus in my opinion. And then underneath that are some of my poetry books, like Sayonara no Atode and then Hyakusai. And honestly, when I picked those out, I was just trying to find spines of books that I could actually understand. It's been about a year or two since I picked those out, and I think if I had the chance to go back again and get some new poetry, I'd get something more like some of Yoko Ono's poetry, like her poetry book Grapefruit, which I think is more in keeping with that whimsical Japanese style that I like, versus just picking out these poetry books, which I honestly haven't even read because I'm not sure what they're about and they don't seem very interesting. But yeah, I would absolutely love to read some of Yoko Ono's poetry, so hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. Underneath that, I have a copy of Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life. That one is in English, and I'm really looking forward to reading that one as well. Back behind this stack, I have this adorable wooden fan, which I'm actually not sure where this comes from, but I thought it fit with the aesthetic of the shelf pretty nicely. And then this little art piece over here is of Tanjiro from Demon Slayer, or Kimetsu no Yaiba. And this art is made by artist Ying's Art is her name. I'll put her in the description. And I got this art piece from a convention, but you can also find her on Instagram and YouTube and lots of other social media. I love her artwork, especially her prints that are done in watercolor. But I also got this little Tanjiro because he's one of my favorite characters and he's so cute. And then hanging above Tanjiro's head right here are actually a 3D printed wooden replica of Tanjiro's earrings. You can kind of see him wearing the earrings in the art piece. But a friend of mine actually 3D printed these for me, and they're so well done and so precisely cut. I have no idea how she did it, but I'm very grateful that I get to keep these little earrings. And then the last few trinkets on the shelf. First of all, we have this little drawing of me, which was made by that same friend who 3D printed the earrings. Yes, I know she's very talented, and I'm so happy to have her as a friend, not only because she's amazing, but because I get to display all of her cool art. And she made me look super pretty in this drawing, so I love it. And then down here, I have some gold pins, which are once again from Japan. Most everything on this shelf is from Japan. And I got these at Nagoya Castle. And then these little squishy guys right here. I've tried desperately to find more of them because I'd love to have a whole collection of them, but sadly I cannot. Still, the two I have, I love them dearly. This is Cinnamon Roll, or Cinema Roll, from Sanrio, and he's been my favorite Sanrio character since I was a kid. So I love this little bunny. And then this bear right here is called Korira Kuma, and he's also super cute and super squishy. Okay, so on to the next shelf. This shelf here is my contemporary / YA contemporary shelf. I'll just quickly run through all the books on the left here. First, I have Room by Emma Donoghue. I have 2 John Green books, The Fault in Our Stars and Turtles All the Way Down. I have Love Letters to the Dead by Ava Delaria, The Truth About Alice by Jennifer Matthew, This Is Where It Ends by Mariki Nijkamp. Apologies if I butchered the pronunciation on that. Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon, Every Day by David Levithan, The Rainbow Troops by Andrea Hirata, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon, a collection of Robert Frost poetry, which is kind of out of place on the shelf, but I don't have a lot of poetry, so I keep it here. And then I have Amy by Mary Beth Miller. This stack of books here up on top, I have a little book that says Believe in Yourself, and it's full of inspirational quotes that I use when I need that extra boost of inspiration. And then this adorable smiley strawberry is probably one of my favorite decorations on my shelf. This was actually made by an artist named Lucy Sparrow. She had an art exhibition in Manhattan, New York that I actually just happened to stumble into, and it's designed to look like a grocery store, but it's full of these felted, smiling little foods. So as you can imagine, I saw the strawberry dude and I fell in love with it. So he came home with me. And that is the story of my strawberry. Underneath, oh, apologies if you hear a dog barking in the background. That's my dog and it's nice out today, so she's very excited. So underneath my strawberry dude, I have Pigs in Heaven by Barbara Kingsolver. I have A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid. I have Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, which is one of my favorite romance novels. I have My Sister's Keeper by Judy Pickles. Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison, There There by Tommy Orange, which I know is a newer release, so if you haven't read it yet, you definitely should. I think it's especially important in the political climate right now. Definitely a good read that I recommend. And then I have Grey by Pete Wentz, which was my favorite book during my Fall Out Boy phase, and I still love Fall Out Boy, so I certainly don't want to diss them, but I just really loved that book at the time because it says a lot about depression and fame that I found very relevant to my life and very important. And then this little glass vase that I have is a display of some of my favorite rocks that I collected from different places throughout my childhood. Some of them are fossils, some are sparkly or shiny, but all in all, I think this collection looks really nice here. And then lastly, we come to my display book, which is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is probably my favorite book that I've read so far this year, even though it's not my usual dose of fantasy. It's so incredible and honestly almost indescribable. It perfectly captures the transition from high school to college and what that's like. It explores themes of social class, sexuality, and love so thoroughly. And also it's set in Ireland, which if you can't tell, I have a fondness for Ireland, so you should definitely read it or watch the TV adaptation on Hulu if you have not. Okay, so we are coming up to my last 2 shelves on the bookshelf. This one is what I like to call my dystopian shelf. It has everything from more traditional dystopians to contemporary 2012 style dystopians. So I'll start off on the left with my traditional dystopians, which I have The Giver by Lewis Lowry, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, 1984 by George Orwell, A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, and The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. That last one isn't really dystopian, but it fits with the color scheme here, which I kind of have a white, black, and orange thing going on, so that's why it's on the shelf. Then for my trinkets on the shelf, I have this little Sears Tower statue, which is actually also a pencil sharpener. And then I have my little Chicago snow globe. And then, of course, those are on top of the Divergent series by Veronica Roth because it is set in Chicago, and that consists of Divergent, Insurgent, Allegiant, and 4. Then I have a few dystopian books which are firsts in series that I never finished, like The Finisher by David Baldacci, Gaughen by Michael Grant, and Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I also have the Maze Runner series by James Dashner, which consists of The Maze Runner, The Scorched Trials, and The Death Cure. I have Monument 14 and Monument 14 Savage Drift by Emmy Laybourne. Then I have a few children's books right next to that. These are all by James Patterson, who was one of my favorite childhood authors, and I loved his Daniel X series, so I have 2 of his books there. I have Watch the Skies and Armageddon. And then I also loved his Maximum Ride series, so I have Fang and Maximum Ride Forever. And then, last but not least, you can't have a dystopian shelf without The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. P.S. If any of you are going to read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, please let me know what your thoughts are on the fact that Suzanne Collins has released a prequel, or if you've already read it, let me know what your thoughts are because I'm not sure if I'm going to read it yet, so I'm curious to see what everybody thinks. And last but certainly not least, I have my childhood bookshelf. These are some of my favorite books from when I was very, very young, and in some cases that means as early as kindergarten. Like I said, I'm a nostalgic collector and these books mean a lot to me, so I keep them here to remind me where I got my start in reading and where my love of magic comes from. So first I'll start over here with the Rainbow Magic series by Daisy Meadows. I adored these fairy books. They were some of the most magical stories in the world to me, and as early 2000s as the covers are, I loved how each fairy had a different personality and a different color of magic. I wanted to believe in these fairy books so badly that when I read them, I would actually replace the characters' names with my own name and the names of my friends, so that it seemed like I was the one going on all those magical adventures. Next, we have the My Secret Unicorn series by Linda Chapman, and even though I wasn't obsessed with horses like some girls, I did love unicorns. I pretty much loved anything magical. Next we have the Katie Kazoo Switcheroo series by Nancy Krulik, in which the main character switches into the bodies of other people. That is a pretty crazy concept for children's books when you think about it, but I loved it. I also loved It's Raining Cupcakes by Lisa Schroeder, solely because of the descriptions and pictures of the different cupcakes. The main character was also obsessed with New York City, so I think that explains a lot about me. And then next I have Savvy by Ingrid Law and Strange Happenings by storyteller Avi, which was my first venture into supernatural horror as a child. Next I have the Animal Magic series by Holly Webb. I have Cat Magic, Dog Magic, and Hamster Magic. And then I have the Magic Kitten series by Sue Bentley. Like I said, pretty much anything magical, anything with magic in the title, I would read it or buy it. Yes, okay. I have the first series of The Warrior Cats by Erin Hunter. I know that might be cringeworthy for some of you, but as a 12-year-old girl, these books were very magical to me. I was obsessed with those talking cats. I admit I was a little weird, maybe I still am, but that is okay. Personally, I believe that each book we read changes us in some way, and to me, the Warrior Cat books were whimsical and influenced my taste in books today. Right next to those, I have the Guardians of the Galaxy and Guardians of oh goodness, and Wolves of the Beyond by Catherine Lasky, which I read when I was about, I think I read the first one when I was 9, but I continued reading them till probably about age 11. I loved wolves and owls, so I thought those books were absolutely awesome. And then I wanted a dog very badly as a child, so I have quite the collection of dog books. A lot of them are Scholastic as well. And I have a beagle right now, and I think some of my partiality to beagles came from my love for the Shiloh series by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor. And I have the second and third book of that series. And then I have A Dog's Life by Anna M. Martin, which was my favorite dog book as a child. It definitely made me cry, and it probably still would if I read it again today. And then I also have Everything for a Dog by Anna Martin. I have White Fang by Jack London, although this is a children's edition. I have Dog Lost by Ingrid Lee. Every Dog Has a Gift by Rachel McPherson, Chicken Soup for the Dog Lover's Soul, The Leanin' Dog by K.A. Newsom, and this book absolutely emotionally destroyed me. Marley, A Dog Like No Other by John Gaughen, Wagget's Tale by Peter Howe, Dog Whisperer: The Rescue by Nicholas Edwards, A Dog's Purpose and a Dog's Journey by W. Bruce Cameron, and The Secret Language of Dogs by Heather Dunphy. And then finally, as my last little trinket here, I have this hourglass full of gold beads from IKEA that acts as a bookend and also makes some very calming sounds. I'm a bit nervous about showing my face on YouTube yet, so here's my dog Lucky. If you listen carefully, you can hear her starting to snore. But anyway, that was my last shelf, so thank you for sticking around for this long and watching me rant about books on my shelf and what they mean to me. I hope this has been enjoyable and calming for you all so far. It was definitely fun for me to catalog what my shelf currently looks like, and I'm excited to see how that will continue to change over time. Make sure to keep an eye on my channel for the realization of some of those video ideas that I talked about. And thank you from myself and from Lucky.